One guy's leaflet led to a total musical revolution. I'm the classical nerd, and today we're talking about the birth of the Baroque era. So, in the Renaissance, vocal writing had come a long way. In fact, music had come a long way, since most music was vocal writing. It had gone from Gregorian chants and gradually added complexity until you got multiple parts with a lot of rules governing them. While sacred music was a big part of the musical culture of the era, this is also when secular music begins to take hold, especially in collections of a cappella songs known as madrigals. And madrigals are interesting not just because they're a bastion of secular music in a world that was mostly sacred, but they're also entirely through composed, meaning that there's no form which you can chunk things into and subsequently analyze. On top of that, the massive set of rules, known as Renaissance counterpoint, began to be loosened when applied to madrigals. Two of the best madrigal composers of this era were Claudio Monteverdi and Carlo Gesualdo, and their rule-breaking exceeded all other composers equal to their fame. While Gesualdo's weirdly chromatic music wasn't to be fully rediscovered and reappreciated until Stravinsky in the 20th century, Monteverdi was one of the premier composers of his day. He was to produce 9 books of madrigals in total, and around 1600 he came out with his 4th book. Now, admittedly, the 4th book of madrigals by Monteverdi is not the most crazy thing ever written by a composer up until that point, but it got on some people's nerves. Many thought that his flagrant disregard for the rules of Renaissance counterpoint signaled the end of the era of logic and insanity in music. So people have been saying this kind of stuff for a long time. It's not new. Giovanni Artusi was a more musically conservative fellow who thought that Monteverdi's music was out of control and needed to be stopped. Artusi took up his pen and produced a scathing criticism of a composer he refused to name. But everybody knew it was Monteverdi, in part because he actually used musical examples from Cruda Amarylli, from Monteverdi's 4th book. For its part, Cruda Amarylli is basically an Italian Taylor Swift song, but I'm not going to get into that. Instead of preparing dissonances and then resolving them downwards by step, as you would in strict Renaissance counterpoint, Monteverdi just leaps to a dissonance, and then just leaps to another one, and then he resolves it. But he resolves it upward, not downward. So as you can see, Artusi was not too pleased at the fact that Monteverdi was breaking all of these rules. It doesn't sound too far out there to the modern ear, but Artusi was quite livid. The problem was simply that Artusi and Monteverdi didn't see eye to eye. To Artusi, music was first and foremost. You followed all of the rules of strict Renaissance counterpoint, and the text just had to fit in where it needed to fit in. In other words, Artusi thought that the text should be subservient to the music. To Monteverdi, it was exactly the opposite. He thought that the rules of strict Renaissance part writing could be broken or bent in as long as it was justified by the expressive qualities of the text. Monteverdi's counter-argument came in the form of his 5th book of madrigals, where he laid out his ideas on musical style. Monteverdi said that prima pratica was Renaissance counterpoint and all of the intricacies involved, basically saying that in the prima pratica style, the music was the most important thing and the text was just sort of there. But he was of the different school. He was of the new school. He was seconda pratica, the second practice where the text was the most important thing and the music was there to highlight the expressive power of wherever you happen to be in the text. Again, while other composers were on Monteverdi's page, and there are even those who are going even further out there than Monteverdi, the criticism that Artusi gave Monteverdi was something around which the new school of composition could materialize. This laid the groundwork for doing away with the a cappella madrigals in favor of solo voices with accompaniment, or even the birth of the art we now know as opera. And one could make the case that the Baroque era truly began because composers realized the unique qualities of Monteverdi's seconda pratica, and thus to the sheer expressive power of music.